So it's really bad for me to...
The guy who does the work, yeah, what's the... Wandati
Wandati, yeah.
Yeah, the guy's playing this.
My mom and dad, Dick and Mildred Austin, have lived lives that would take multiple film genres to encapsulate. Cowboy westerns, action-adventure films, and from musicals to comedy dramas. Traveling the world both in peaceful times and in times of war.
Oh, that just sounds terrible to me.
They have served God, our country, our family, and are living examples of what has become known as the greatest generation. Serving not because they have to, but because it's the right thing to do. My parents continue to put others' needs above their own and are active, involved grandparents who are truly loved by their entire family, including a couple of weasels. Well, dogs, technically. We are very grateful to Matt Gray for documenting them in their home in September of 2011 as my dad and my mom reflect on some of the highlights of their lives, marriage and family. We love you, Grammy and Do.
I was raised in Seal Beach, California, and attended Huntington Beach High School and Long Beach City College. Growing up in Seal Beach, it was mostly a cow town because the main industry was the cattle ranch nearby, the Hellman Ranch, and the powerhouse. That was the only industry. And I used to go out to the ranch with my horse and punch cattle and help the cowboys out there break horses and did a little bit of everything. You know, it's a wonder I still have fingers to play the piano at all. But after Seal Beach, I took up violin, would you believe? My mom bought me a little tiny miniature violin, you know, and I played that for a while, and she heard me play that thing for a while, and she says, "That sounds pretty good, guess I better get you a new one." And so we went downtown to LA and Fritz Polpenick. Fritz Polpenick was a violin maker. He had a beautiful violin for me, a special, and he says it sounds like a Stradivarius. So I played that violin for a while, and I ended up in the Los Angeles Philharmonic, the Los Angeles Junior Philharmonic, and played in the first violin section yet. And then they had a competition for the music teachers of Southern California, and I won it. Would you believe? My accompanist was Rene Williams, and he was a top-notch pianist. And watching him play, I always played my violin watching him play. And my violin teacher says, "Why don't you try the piano?" She was frustrated with me playing the violin. She says, "Why don't you start playing the piano?" And I says, "I think I will." So I took up the piano at an early age and continued on my musical studies, but along came Uncle Sam and says, "Come on into the Army." So they drafted me into the Coast Artillery, Fort MacArthur. While I was down there, I said, "This is not for me." And I'm sitting there guarding the gun emplacement with my rifle in the rain, you know. And I see these guys fly over. I said, "They're staying nice and dry inside the airplane." I said, that's for me. So I went down and applied for aviation cadet training, and they accepted me. And that was it. I was off on my career. I was on class 43K. We were the first class to ever fly the B-25 in advanced flying school. I flew that, and then I said, "I want to get in P-38s. That's the airplane I've been headed for." And they said, "No, stick with the B-25. We're going to have you flying off a carrier." So we were practicing for just such a feat. So we'd fly around, make these carrier approaches into the LSO, and landing signal officer, giving us the paddles, you know, and all that stuff. And we'd come in and chop the throttles. When he'd give you the cross paddles, you'd chop the throttles, and bam, that old B-25. That was a lot of airplane to stall out at, 50 feet in the air, which is the way the Navy guys fly. You know, we don't fly that way in the Air Force, but the Navy guys flew that way. while we were doing that, the Navy was experimenting with a hook, putting a hook on the B-25, so that when we came in, we catch the cable, you know, like the Navy airplanes do. And there wasn't much to tie that hook to. In a B-25, you have stringers on the side of the fuselage, several bulkheads, and they're held together with these stringers, you know. So they're tying this hook to these stringers. Every time they'd land, pull the rear end of the airplane out. So that program was canceled, needless to say. And there I was, a B-25 pilot, but I was sent down to MacDill Field, and I flew the left seat in my combat tour. We went to England. I was assigned to the 398th and the 602nd Squadron. It was very interesting, to say the least. It scared the hell out of me, man, the first few missions, because we were getting the heck kicked out of us. And then I got finally in the left seat and flew the rest of my missions. My co-pilot got hit in the head with a piece of flak. Piece of flak come through the top of the cockpit, hit him in the helmet, opened up his head. I had a hole that big in him, and he survived. He lived through it. Alex is alive today. He became a doctor. Spent so much time, I guess, in the hospital, and he became a doctor. But anyway, I think Alex is still going strong, but the rest of our crew all passed away, I'm sorry to say. I soon got out of the military, went back to college, Long Beach City College. I was studying music. The music was so easy for me. I got straight A's and no problem at all. And I was taking piano lessons at the same time. And at the same time, I went into boxing class. I was in there boxing with guys, you know, and one day I caught my thumb on a guy's nose or something, and it sprung my thumb back, and I wasn't able to play as well as I should, you know. Boy, my piano teacher come down on me with a ton of lead. I went in and I was making a recording on the radio. Edison, remember Edison Hannaford? And he and I were playing the Rachmaninoff concerto, second piano concerto. I was trying to improvise without using my thumb, you know. Oh, it was terrible. But I practiced and practiced, and finally the thumb got better. And with that radio show coming up, you know, that we were to play on, she was really fretting. She didn't think I'd ever make it, but I made it. We played it. Is everybody ready?
Yep.
From the school days, from there, United Airlines hired me. They offered me a job I couldn't resist, you know. Instead of flying for them, I was in administration with United, and all of a sudden I get greetings from the Air Force. No, they gave me a warning. They sent me a little note and asked me if I would consider returning to the Air Force if the country needed me. You know, I'm thinking in the terms of war and things like that. And I said, yes, certainly. Bang! 2 weeks later, here got a stack of orders that high, returning me to the Air Force. So I returned to Mather Air Force Base over here and flew B-25s again. And then they moved me up into the T-29. So I flew the Convair there for about 3 years, training navigators. From there I went to Korea, and I spent a year over in K6, a little town called Pyeongtaek, and I was the base operations officer over there. I had an L-20, a little Beaver aircraft, you know, the little de Havilland Beaver. But once in a while I was able to get a C-47 so we could fly over to Japan and get supplies or do what we ever had to do. We got into a firefight one evening, a bunch of North Koreans. That's another story. From Korea, I came back to Brooks Air Force Base and got into air evac, and that's where I met your dear mother, your dear mom. She was a flight nurse.
I was stationed in Germany, in beautiful Munich, Germany. And then I was assigned to an air evac squadron in San Antonio, Texas. Well, the day I arrived, they had crickets about this size, or I don't know if they were roaches or what they were. You couldn't walk across the tarmac without crunching them. And I thought, where has the Air Force sent me? What third world country have they sent me? And things started to fall in place, and it was turning out to be great. And some of the flight nurses would say to me, have you met Dick Austin yet? Have you flown with Dick Austin? And I could care less. And I said, no, I certainly have not. Well, we had a flight together. We were assigned a flight. He was the aircraft commander, and I was assigned as the flight nurse in the back of the airplane. And I always carried my dog tags in my purse, because I didn't like to wear them because they jingled when you walked. So your father's first words to me at showtime were, because I think he knew, he said, Lieutenant, are you wearing your dog tags? I said, no. He said, well, get them on. I thought, what is this? So that was my first introduction.
I just wanted her to unbutton her blouse, you know.
Oh, stop that.
She flew in the back end of my Convair aircraft. She was the boss back there. She even had a colonel come aboard one day and started telling them about this, that, and the other. She ran him off the airplane. That spread all over the Air Force. The first lieutenant ran a colonel off the airplane. But, well, there's many, many stories to tell about our flying in air evac. You know, 7 years, and sort of made up for the people that I might have hurt with my bombs in World War II. I saved lives in the flying air evac. So I tried to break even. I think I come pretty close to breaking even because I transported a lot of people.
We were carrying a light load, so your dad came back to check the cabin. And I was reading, because I had a break, and I was reading a piece of sheet music. And he said, oh, do you play the piano? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, why don't you come over and see my Steinway? And I thought, oh boy.
Uh-oh.
Oh boy. I'm staying away from this pilot. So anyway, we were flying out to Travis, and so we all decided as the crew to go to the Nut Tree, which was a really nice restaurant.
Well, I remember I tried to impress my beautiful flight nurse that I had in the back of the airplane, and I said, "You ever see a pine float?" She says, "No, I never." So I dropped my toothpick into her glass
Isn't
of water.
that awful?
How to make a first impression, you know?
So I got up from the table and I thought, this is awful. First he said, come see my Steinway. Then he drops a toothpick in my water glass, and I thought, this is the last flight I hope we ever have together. Finally, you called and asked me to go to dinner with you. And I thought, should I chance it? Okay, why not? So I said, sure. He said, where do you want to go? Well, I was just out of Europe, so La Louisiane was the best place. It was all French food. He didn't drink. He didn't hang out at the clubs. That was one of the first things that attracted me to him, because I just didn't want someone that would get off of a flight and decide, well, we'll hang out at the club for a while. We did date, had lots of fun, lots of happy times. And then we got engaged, and we set the date for December of 1958. I wanted to get married in the chapel at San Antonio, the Air Force Chapel. Well, there was just one hang-up. We were being married in December. The chaplain was assigned to the paratroopers, so he had to go away for 3 months So he said, you're going to have your rehearsal in September for your December wedding. The whole wedding party was on flying status, which means one of us could have been out somewhere. John was an Air Force pilot, Nikki was an Air Force nurse, and then I was on flying status and Dick was on flying status, and we were to be married that Saturday. But we were all off in different directions, so we all hoped we would get together. But our commanding officer, Colonel Bloomer, he said, now listen, if one of you gets stuck out there, I'll send a plane and bring you in, which I thought was really nice. And then he said, I'll just switch crews. Well, anyway, our wedding party did get together, as you can see, because we did get married. Dick got in on a Thursday, I got in on a Friday. Our maid of honor got in that morning, Saturday morning. But we all made it to the church on time.
And so, from there, I went on to go to Germany and flew more Convair's Air in Tempelhof. Say not my tour, but our tour, because they had your mom and you. We had all kinds of things happen in Berlin. So anyway, I came back home from Berlin and was immediately assigned to survival school up at Fairchild, up in Washington. They treat you like a prisoner, put you through all kinds of torture, and that was no picnic, that survival school. No picnic at all. But that was before we went to Viet Nam. So fortunately I didn't have to use that survival training. But I flew the 5th Special Forces Group. The Green Berets, you know who they are. I'm a Green Beret now, they made me an honorary Green Beret. I used to deliver these Special Forces troops to all of these outlying camps. Some of these camps, their runways are not more than 1,000 feet long. But I got this big caribou full of troops. 50 troops in there full of combat gear, and I got to get it on that little airstrip and bring it to a halt. Of course, fortunately, we had reverse props on there. We get them in there, and we get them out again too. But the other unfortunate part of it is when we're so slow, when we're leaving one of those bases, the VC would be filling us full of holes with their machine guns, their AK-47s and whatnot, be shooting up the airplane, hitting some of the guys once in a while. Fortunately, none of the guys were hitting my airplane, but some of the other guys were badly hit. In fact, they even went down, the whole airplane. So I'm very fortunate in that respect that I managed to fly another 700 combat hours. 700 hours of combat over there.
We have 3 beautiful grandchildren, and they are our dearest treasures, Haley, Michael, and Hannah. And folks used to say to us, why don't you travel? And I'd say, why are you running away from your family? You know, that's what it's all about. Dick and I had been all over the world. We didn't have to go back and see it again, but it was our grandchildren and our family, our son, that was so important to us. That we had
2 pups, don't forget them.
Oh, yeah, for him, 2 pups.
2 pups, which we call the weasels.
We really, really have been blessed. And we're very fortunate to live close to our family. That's important to us. Our oldest granddaughter, Haley, is in Hawaii and is a Christian minister, or in Christian ministry. And our grandson is getting ready to go to college. And then we have our 6-year-old Hannah. That is really special.